Hey, boys and girls, today we're going to take everything we've done last week and this week, and we're going to put it together to analyze a text. Let's take a look at our story for today. It's called The Bake Sale. What do you think this story will be about? If you said a bake sale or something where they're selling baked items, you are absolutely right. Let's start by looking at our entertaining beginning. Where will we find the entertaining beginning? Right up here. Right? It's probably going to be this part. See if you can tell which strategy our author uses. Splat! I cracked an egg and the firm yellow yolk fell into my mixing bowl. How I loved baking. My grandfather had not only shared his special secret recipe for oatmeal raisin cookies with me, but shown me exactly how to make them. From start to finish, I'd made them all by myself, and they'd be the hit of the bake sale. Do you think this author used action? Did they use a thought or question? Did they use dialogue or an exclamation? Or did they use sound? I think that they used a thought. Look at this. How I loved baking. They'd be the hit of the bake sale. This author asked himself or herself, what would I be thinking? Let's continue. Are you sure about that, Susie? My friend Kate asked, looking worried. She thought that baking from scratch without using a store-bought mix was really tricky. But she didn't know how often I'd helped my grandfather whip up a batch of these tasty cookies, or how carefully he'd taught me the rules of baking. I knew it was important to sift and carefully measure the flour. I understood why it was important to use softened but not melted butter, and of course, I knew better than to crowd too much cookie dough onto one cookie sheet. This is a use of detail. She didn't just say, I knew how to bake cookies. She proves it to the reader, right, by telling step by step what would happen when she baked these cookies. So my answer to Kate's question was a definite yes. I was sure I could make cookies for the bake sale all by myself, and they'd turn out delicious. It was important that they turn out well because we were going to charge money for them at the third grade bake sale. Okay, this is something kind of interesting we haven't thought a lot about. So, that yellow is hard to see, isn't it? That's okay. This is her motivation. She is telling us why this story matters. Why does it matter that the cookies turn out well? They're for a bake sale to raise money. I wonder if we'll find out more about her motivation. Everybody in my class was excited about contributing to a goodie to the sale at the bake sale, which was our way of raising money to pay for a field trip to the zoo. So look at this. Now we really know why this story is important. Her class is trying to raise money for a field trip to the zoo. Kate was bringing brownies that she and her mother would make from a mix. My friend Theo said he'd bring a berry pie, and Willa's mom had promised to make her famous carrot cake with crunchy walnuts and a sweet pineapple filling. We'd made signs with brightly colored markers reading third grade bake sale, Saturday 9 a.m., Park Lane Elementary School, and posted them up all over town. Can you picture those posters? I can. That's because she is using her details. All the third graders would meet our teacher that morning where we'd set up picnic tables in the shade of the towering elm tree that stood on the green lawn in front of our school. Boys and girls, look at the juicy details here. She doesn't just say under the tree in front of our school. She says in the shade of the towering elm tree. That's good writing. On the picnic tables, we'd set up an irresistible display of pies, cakes, and cookies, each carefully wrapped in clear plastic to protect their lusciousness. Are you seeing all this detail and description? Just thinking about the selection of the treats, some crispy and chocolatey, others chewy and fruity, made my sweet tooth smile. All of this is rich detail. I can picture this scene so well. We're about to take a shift, and I want you to see if you can spot where our author builds suspense. I'm going to get my different color ready here. I'm going to do green for suspense. Here we go. So here it was Friday night, and I was making my oatmeal raisin cookies. My mom wanted to help, but I'd promised her that I was up to the job on my own. The only thing I wasn't allowed to do by myself was put the baking sheets into the oven or take them out when they were done. I started by making a creamy mixture of softened butter and sugar. Then I added the other ingredients. The last step was stirring in a cup of juicy raisins. It wasn't long before the dough was thoroughly mixed and ready for the oven. I put heaping spoonfuls of it onto the cookie sheet, carefully spaced so that the cookies wouldn't meld together as they baked, and called my mom to put them in the oven. So far, everything seems normal, right? I'm not really worried about her. She sounds like she knows what she's doing. The last thing I did was set the timer for exactly 10 minutes. I had to be certain not to burn them. Then I had to have a taste. I was in for the surprise of a lifetime when I licked the wooden spoon with which I'd been mixing the dough. Did you hear it? This is that suspense. Because when I read that sentence, I'm immediately asking, why was she surprised? What happened that would make that an event? Why would she be surprised? Let's find out. Instead of the sweetness I'd been expecting, my dough was bitter. What had gone wrong? I was even more upset when the first batch came out of the oven flat and dense. This is more of that suspense, right? What's going to happen if she doesn't have her cookies for the bake sale? I want to read and find out. Because there's suspense, I'm curious what happens next. She took a small bite of a still hot cookie. I think I know, she said quietly. Did the recipe say baking powder or baking soda? There it was. My mistake. I'd added baking powder instead of baking soda. That was the reason my cookies had a bitter taste and a heavy rather than a crumbly texture. How could I have made such a dumb mistake? I felt like crying. In the morning, Mom and I stopped at the bakery and bought a selection of cookies to bring to the bake sale. I felt like such a failure when I saw Theo's pies and the cake Willa's mom had baked. Even Kate's brownies, which I knew came from a box mix, looked delicious with messy swirls of frosting. And rainbow sprinkles. My cookies looked perfect, but they were obviously store-bought, and I felt ashamed of them and myself for making that dumb mistake. Miserably, I added my contribution to the table of treats. How is she feeling? It doesn't just say she's sad, right? It says she felt ashamed, and she miserably puts her treats on the table. What happened? Kate asked. When I told her, she just shrugged and said, "Oh well, Susie, you tried. The next batch of cookies you will bake will probably come out just right." Theo agreed. "My grandmother did most of the work on my pies," he admitted. "It's cool that you even tried to make cookies all by yourself." "My mom says baking is kind of like a science experiment," Willa said. "Even a tiny little mistake makes a big difference." My friends made me feel much better, and our bake sale turned out to be a smashing success. By lunchtime, every single sweet, even my store-bought cookies, was sold, and we had a nice amount of money to add to our field trip fund. Okay, this author could have ended this here. It's kind of the end of the story, but look what we have next. Remember our extended ending? Let's see what the author uses as part of that extended ending. Here we go. Looking back, I realized that being miserable about a batch of bitter cookies was like crying over spilled milk. It just made no sense. From now on, I decided I was going to forgive myself for my mistakes. I'd take advice from more experienced bakers and try again and again and once again until I got it just right. If I kept trying, there was no doubt I'd master the science of baking, and the first people to taste my triumphs would be my kind and honest friends. This author is making a decision, and she's including it here. She is telling how she will feel moving forward into the future. How did this event affect her? She learned a lesson from it. So she's telling us what she learned. Why is this a powerful ending? You're right. You can learn from this author too. Absolutely. We learn her same lesson. Tomorrow, we'll be taking what we know from this story to answer some questions.